Hey, Lord of the Rings fans, it's your boy, Knew Better Do Better. We are back with another episode of Voices of Arda. I'm here with my main homegirl, KaliCosplay. What's up, KaliCosplay?
Hey, welcome
What's
back to
going
another
on?
week, everybody.
Yes, we've been on a little hiatus, trying to get ourselves together. It's more like Callie's reminding me that we have episodes to do. I don't know who the guests are. I don't know what the topic is. I'm lost in the sauce. And yeah, so forgive me.
Oh, good.
But
That's why we're a team. That's why we do this together so that we can cover each other's bases and make sure we get all the good content out there that we can.
I don't know what I'm doing. I just do things. Like didn't the Joker say that? That I just do things. That's me. I just do things. So we are gonna do a thing today. And we're gonna be talking to some very special people, wonderful, wonderful people. These are like my dudes. Talk to them every day. We play games together, and we're gonna be talking about a game. Callie, this isn't a game that I'm too familiar or strong with. So I'm going to need you guys to lead and steer this conversation. I'm usually used to doing that, but I'm going to take a back seat today, and I'm going to let you guys be nerds because this is some big nerd shit going on right now. Callie, drop it on them. Who do we have? Who are our guests? What are we talking about? Let everybody know what's up.
All right, so this week's episode is going to be on Dungeons and Dragons and how it relates back to Tolkien's works. And for our first guest, we have
Nerd shit.
I couldn't even get through that. All right, for our first guest, we have Jeff. He is my D&D bestie. We have done a few campaigns together, and I know he's gonna act all bashful now when I say that, but yes, Jeff is a very good
You
friend.
can't just say Jeff. It's Jeff the Troll. He is the epitome of a troll, but he's the best troll. He is like the troll you want on your side. You don't ever want to go against this troll, but Jeff is awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
What's
Hey,
going
Jeff.
on?
Yeah, so do I introduce myself now, or does Pete get in on this too, or what happens? I don't know how this
Well,
works.
you spoiled his name, dude.
I
You
mean,
can't
his
introduce
name's
him
right
now because you're
there.
just like Pete. Jesus.
All right. Well,
All right,
since we know there's a second guest on here now, thanks to Jeff.
Spoiler alert, sorry.
We're just teasing you, man. We have GM extraordinaire Peter Segura. Pete, say hi.
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, my name's Pete. I sometimes go by the username Belmont. I love Tolkien, as we all know, or else I wouldn't be here. But I also have been playing D&D for several years, and yeah, I can't wait to talk about it with y'all.
All right. All
I
right.
just go by Jeff, and I play
Jeff.
games, and I like Lord of the Rings. So yeah,
All right.
don't know what I'm
Jeff,
doing
where
here.
can we find you? Where can we find you if we were looking for you on, say, TikTok?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Probably in your live stream. That's where I meet most of the time. But I'm
That's
usually in
his best
the
work.
That is where he does his best work. Yes.
commenting anywhere else. I don't make many videos because they're trash. But
Cut it out.
yeah, I'm Jeff the Troll, as it's said by the man himself, and happy to be here. I guess the guest list is getting a little thin, but happy to represent.
Damn.
You know we're doing bad when we're talking about D&D and I'm in here. I could have sat this episode out. My goodness would not allow me to play D&D. Like I cannot wrap my head around it. And I'm actually grateful that I have such great friends that tried to get me involved in the game. I didn't follow through with the game. I liked the portion that I did play, but I just don't think it's for me. But it opened up a whole world of how many people are interested and love D&D, and it's remarkable and it's wonderful to see. And it'll get people who are not, who typically don't think in that way, like think D&D is like, oh, just for nerds. Like I know I'm joking, we're up there joking, but I saw how much love and care is put into the game and how precise it is and how much goes into it. And to be honest, I'm really just very daunted by the game. It's not that I don't like it or I'm too cool to play it. I'm very daunted by it. So that's something that I've never encountered. I'm really not daunted by things. I just typically just dive into things. But something like that, I'm like, what? I don't even know. Build armor. What? Make a story. Talk to what? I don't. It's a lot. So, guys, share what got you guys into D&D, and how did you overcome like the task of actually getting into the actual mechanics of the game, because it's kind of complex from what I saw.
Jeff, you want to go first?
Yeah. So, I guess my tabletop kind of experience started back when I was pretty young, 10, 11, 12, when there was a commercial on for this game called Hero Quest. It's a very board game. You got magic cards you play, and you roll the dice and attack and stuff. And it's not as involved as D&D, but that's kind of where it started. And then my older brother, he had some friends that were playing, and he said, "Hey, if you want to come along and play, you can come hang out with us." I said, "Sure, let's play." And then I rolled up a bard, and it died on my third campaign, and then I've been hooked ever since.
All right. What about you, Belmont? Oh, Peter. Excuse me.
Peter, you call me whatever you want.
Peter. Yes.
So my initial exposure to D&D, because like when I was growing up, I was really into medieval Lego building. Like my brother and I would like run a town, and we'd have like little campaign things going on. But I was given this game for Christmas called Dragon Quest, and it came with this VHS, and it was like this really dumbed down version of Dungeons and Dragons. But that VHS is embedded in my head. It is the corniest thing you have ever seen in your life, like straight 1991 effects, and like it's wonderful. But I didn't really think of D&D again until probably when I was in my mid-20s, and I got invited to play a variant of the game called Pathfinder. And funny enough, I had a character in there named Elros, because at the time I was reading, about the Akalabeth and everything going on with Tar Miniatar, because as we know, Elros is the brother of Elrond. And I called him Elros the Wise-ish. He was a half-elf bard who just seemingly can deceive his way through anything. It was quite a fun experience. And ever since then, I've just been like on and off with it. But I would say in the last several years, especially with the pandemic, I have gotten more involved with D&D, especially with making my own campaigns.
Awesome. That's awesome. Kelly, what about you?
Before we go any further, I have just
Oh,
a
no.
little fact to drop on you guys. So while Lance may be an uncommon name these days, not that long ago, people were named Lance a lot.
I'm laughing more at KnewBetta's face right now.
Yo, I'm gonna be honest with you. I forgot about the joke. Like, we talked about it right before we were going to do this, and then we kind of started going, and I was like, "Oh shit," you know what I'm saying? Like we're rolling, and I forgot completely about the joke, and then she just ruined my whole day.
All
right.
On to the topic, Callie. Stick to the subject, Lancelot.
But for real, I just started playing Dungeons and Dragons this year. You guys got me into it, honestly, being part of this community, and a couple people put together a campaign, and that was the first ever campaign that I did. We did it with Jeff. You were with me. We got special friendship bracelets. It was amazing. And I've just kind of been hooked ever since, because the storytelling and I also knew better was in the same camp where I was like, I'm not going to sit down for 4 straight hours and do the same thing. Like I cannot do that. But the other day we played for, how long was it? It was like 5 or 6 hours. We did a whole one shot, which means like the story, you play a whole story from start to finish, in one go. And that was like 5 or 6 hours, but I was able to do it. So if I could do it, I really think anyone could do it. But KnewBetta's like, no, guys, I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't think I can do it, but you guys are giving me you're giving me hope. You're giving me hope.
It's just so much fun to hang out with your friends and like have something to focus on, like have missions and have interactions where you're not necessarily always having to be yourself. right? When you play your character, you can be more goofy, or you can be more serious, or you can be whoever you want to be, and that's the magic of D&D, isn't it?
And that's the cool thing about this episode is that we got somebody who's not into it, hasn't really, put his faith into the game, who's trying to open up his mind, but is not quite there yet. And you guys who are like, some of you are like really into it, a newcomer who's into it, likes it and stuff like that. So we got all different perspectives, and it's really cool to see. Now, this is, of course, a Tolkien podcast. This is Voices of Arda. And can you guys tell me the correlation between Dungeons and Dragons and Tolkien's works?
I definitely can. So originally the game was made, correct me, his name is Gary Gygax is the gentleman who created Dungeons and Dragons, and that was back in the 70s. But it was actually based off a previous iteration, kind of a pseudo D&D game called Chainmail. And the reason why actually is directly comes from Tolkien itself, where a lot of people wanted to experience the Battle of the Five Armies. And so a lot of it dealt with miniature building and so forth, and map building. But a lot of the initial races for D&D, being that like the premier fantasy of that time was, there's John Carter, there was Conan the Barbarian, but there of course is J.R.R. Tolkien, and he was quite established at this point. And that's why some of the standard races you see are human, elf, dwarf, and halfling. And a lot of the different enemy sets you'll see, like a Baelor is very much a Balrog and so forth. So a lot of the influences that we see in D&D 1E, we call it, which is first edition, is directly related to that. But Gygax had some comments. He tried to stray away from being completely influenced by Tolkien, because in the end D&D is a game that is meant to kind of open the horizon for everyone, where you could choose to be all sorts of different races or any type of character, just get out of your own skin.
That's what's up, man. And this is something that I did notice, and that did make me want to like really dive into D&D. I think it might be the actual mechanics or the role playing that I'm not used to. I very much grew up like playing basketball, video games, certain games in my neighborhood. You just you didn't play, and whether it was from people just thinking it was like, oh, that's for this type of people or that type of people. And I'm so glad that in this day and age, we are shying away from things like that. We're shying away from things like that. Words that used to be like taboo back in the day, like nerd, geek, are like the cool sets to be now. Like these are things that are embraced and stuff like that. So I still have some work on myself to do to get into the D&D thing, but we're gonna make it happen. So Jeff,
Yes, sir.
what is your favorite class to play in D&D?
I myself, not much of a I'm kind of I don't like getting over daunted by like casters, so I play a lot of front line, sword and board, hero types like front line. So I play fighters. I like playing rangers, rogues, those kind of things. So I guess if I had to pick, my first character was a bard, but my favorite character growing up was a ranger, because Aragorn, just the cool, awesome character that's gonna be the wanderer, the adventurer out in the wilderness. That's kind of the archetypal character that I've always wanted to be about. So that's kind of my favorite.
Cool. What about you, Be1mont?
I didn't know that, Jeff. That's awesome. Because Jeff actually plays a Bjorning in our Middle Earth campaign that we have set up, which is like, he's one of my favorite characters. But me personally, I like playing casters now. It's taken me a while to get used to it. I play a couple different campaigns, and I play one where I'm a chronologist, because KnewBetta knows I love Black Clover, so the character is actually based off Julius Novachrono. So I'm able to be a time wizard, and it's pretty fun. I've had a lot of fun with that. But I would say my favorite character is like kind of the halfling thief. I love Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo Baggins, to me, like, I was listening to Roast Mutton, the chapter of The Hobbit today, because I have a great theatrical audiobook of it. And it was just like Bilbo in that he's just clowning and he's goofing off, and when it really comes down to it, he knows how to get himself out of a pickle. And I just really like that archetype of a character who, yes, he may have the ring, but he is quite the burglar, isn't he?
Absolutely. Cali Cal, what's going on? you know, being somebody that's new to Dungeons and Dragons and new to the races and the roles, so far, what has been your favorite role that you've been playing?
So when these guys talk about casters, I don't know if you quite if we ever just throw out a term, like I almost just threw out one shot without explaining what it meant. And of course, if
I
you
got
don't,
it though.
you
It's the
did.
roles I get because I do play games where there are different roles, like a tank, somebody who does a certain damage. So somebody that like in League of Legends, that would be like a caster type for the most part. Like,
Exactly.
somebody that does that type of thing. Then, up top there's usually a fighter or somebody who would be like somebody who I would like to play. So if I was answering that question, I'd be like a fighter. I'd be somebody with a sword or something. I don't know what it's called exactly in D&D, but I'm sure you guys can correct me. I'd be like on the
That's
front
exactly
lines
what
of
the
the
name of the
battle
class
fighting.
is.
You know
Is
what I'm saying?
they're actually called fighters. That's one of the
Oh, look at that.
main classes in like initial vanilla D&D. It's actually one of my favorite classes because there's actually, if this wasn't clear, when you play D&D, you obviously choose a species because they don't like using the word race as much anymore, but you choose a species, and then you choose a class that you want to like really focus. And most times that species will accentuate what class you have because you have stats. So for example, with that, when you choose a fighter, you will level up, and max level in D&D is level 20, but you have different archetypes to your fighter. Like you could be a samurai or a champion, and you could go and you could take on more like niche roles where you find that you could fit a specific criterion like in a battle. So for example, to your point, fighter, frontline, bruiser, get into the action. That's exactly what a fighter would do because it has like multiple swings. It could do multiple actions. That's what you refer to when you like attack someone on a turn. It's called an action. And there's this thing called an action economy for each player, where it's like the max and the minimum, the maximum amount of like moves they could do or actions they could take. So with the fighter at higher levels, they could actually take multiple hits and deal multiple hits while also being able to like, action surge and like take another swing. So it's like if you picture it in your head, because this is all role playing, you now have a fighter, he steps up, he does his rolls and say he hits all three. It's like, your fighter just stepped up to this enemy and like in 3 fell blows took him out, and it's very cool to visualize that. And it's actually a lot of the responsibility falls like 50-50, where it's on the dungeon master, it's on the player to kind of create that scene based off of that information.
And nice. And with that information, we're getting back to Kali. You were just going to say you like casters?
No, so that tends to take a bit more understanding of the game. It's a lot more complicated to deal with the spells than it is to say just to pull out a crossbow and shoot at an enemy. So right now I'm
Both
playing.
Both are fun.
Both are fun. Yes, both are very much fun.
Kali,
So I'm learning the spell.
of your crossbow and shooting at enemies. What about your friends? You shoot at your friends. Have you ever shot your friend playing the game?
KnewBetta is referring to the one time that he played with us, and I tried to shoot an enemy, and I rolled very badly, and almost ended up shooting him instead.
You guys wonder why I don't play this game.
It gets targeted by Kali,
Kali, tell us about your shooter. Tell us about your shoot 'em up bang bang style of play.
Right now, my favorite character to play is it's a very different, it's quite off the rails. It's a plasmoid. So it's like a green,
He's a blob.
I'm a green blob called Bob Blob.
Like bleep and gloop?
Yeah. So I can like
yes, actually yes.
take away my form, and I can like slither and sloop into things, and it's very fun.
Myself, and even though this is way before my time, but it used to come on Cartoon Network back when it first started. You guys remember the Herculoids? So Kali's.
Yo, we talked about this. I love that show.
I love that show, bro. Like I used to watch that shit endlessly. And what it sounds like Kali is describing is these two amorphous blobs called Bleep and Gloop. They can take the form of anything. They do all this cool shit, and they're like hilarious. And they go bloop, 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 and it's shit like that shit. But they're funny. They're part of the Herculoids, and they're awesome. And you guys should watch the
It's
Herculoids.
a great show.
So there are some cool, sounds like there's some cool characters and cool races and things like that in D&D. And if for anybody out there who's going to watch this episode and, you know what I'm saying, we're daunted, or like I said, I keep using that word because it's very cool, daunted. Keep using that word, you know, who's scared of playing, you know, who's apprehensive of doing that. Check out all these cool things you can be. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, you know what? I'm gonna give this another try. I'm gonna try really hard to play one game. I'm not gonna do multiple games. Don't ask me, Belmont. No, I'm not doing it. But I'm gonna get
Oh,
into it.
I have
Now I
something in
know
mind for you.
but it's gotta be very cool. Now I know I've been asking some questions, but I know Kali has drummed up some questions, and she has these questions for you two guys. So I'm gonna let her take over. You guys know a little more about the D&D than I do. So I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna learn for a second. So Kali, take it away. I know you got some questions for our guys.
Well, not so much a question, but more conversation. So we are doing a special game, and I will actually let Pete explain this, mostly because he is our do you like to be DM or GM?
DM, you know, I'm just Dungeon Master.
Dungeon Master.
that
There we
term.
go.
It's a
That's
little more
classic.
Before we get into that,
foreboding
I was going
Dungeon
to ask
Master.
this question. Can you guys explain what a DM or a GM is for our listeners who aren't aware?
Jeff, you want to explain? I got.
Yeah, so I mean, like, so like kind of like how they're the ones that facilitate the story. They're the ones that kind of oversee and set up the dungeons. They set up the traps, the monsters that you get the players encounter. They tell the story. But they're kind of a player in and of themselves. I mean, it sounds adversarial, but really they are there to facilitate and help bring the story together. And kind of like the overall arching narrator of the story. So they have the most important role because they have to plan out the whole thing. So it's be kind to your DMs, everybody.
All right.
It's a hard job.
To add on to that, you know, in a DM, at least this is how I see it. A DM is supposed to curate a world for his players to enjoy. So to this point, like a dungeon master can sound very adversarial, where it's like, oh, dungeon master versus players. I need to what we refer to as a team kill my players to win. And that's not the point of Dungeons and Dragons per se. And I always say it to everyone. I'm like, hey, you know, I just make the world, you guys live in it. And when you guys want to do something, I'm just there to populate that whole situation. And, you know, things that get quite silly. You could go from just ongoing combat and like running through the woods and trying to survive, or you could be sitting in a tavern and you're watching your friend roll constitution rolls to see how drunk they are. It could go either way. It's really dependent on how your players want to, you know, which way they want to go.
That sounds cool. Sounds like being a dungeon master might be the best part of this game, actually. You know, you get to kind of influence what's going on, you know, put some enemies here, you know what I'm saying? Dictate, what if this had an enchantment on the wine? It made you fall in love, like the Death of Broken Hearts and Willow, like, you know what I'm saying? So now the first female you see, you fall in love. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
Don't be giving our
might have to
DM
try this
any
dungeon
ideas
master.
there, KnewBetta. Oh,
Well, there
no.
are charm spells
No.
and what have you that do certain things. There's suggestion spells. There are a lot of, they've made it very dynamic where it's like, you think about a caster or a wizard. You think someone like, oh, firebolt, or I'm going to shoot lightning at you, but that's not always it. You could have like, you know, hideous laughter and these effects that like put people into a state of shock or fear, or make them like be hysterical. You can cause individuals to, you know, take suggestions and be like, hey, don't you have to go see the dentist right now? I had a friend when we were playing a game do that in the middle of combat. Giant ogre, like, hey, you got to go to the dentist, you better leave. And he just left. He's like, you're right, gosh, my appointment. And just like walked out. And you can't do anything because he's like, it's all rolls, it's all, you know, probability rolls against each other. So if you roll low or high against it, it's what's going to be the outcome.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that so much.
Yeah.
Kali, I'll let you continue and take over. Thank you so much for explaining that to us.
So when I was looking around under the search term Lord of the Rings and D&D, I found two things mostly. The first was that D&D was actually, the original stuff was actually so close to Lord of the Rings that the Tolkien estate sued TSR, did they not?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. and they lost, so they had to. That's why Baylor, you called them, which I clearly
Yeah.
haven't. They were originally Balrogs, and they were originally Ents, but they had to change all the names and stuff. And since then, D&D has tried to distance themselves from Lord of the Rings so that they don't get into those copyright issues.
And
The second thing I found
my,
was a lot of people find it really difficult to incorporate Lord of the Rings into into D&D and vice versa. But Pete, you have done that wonderfully successfully for us. If you want to describe that.
Sure. So, when I was getting more and more into D&D, I had this idea of playing a campaign that existed within like the Middle Earth universe, because I just thought there were different areas that had enough gray area of information where we could just kind of like sandbox it and figure out, well, these could be, cool situations to be involved in. And I went back and forth, and just to let you know, there are like merchandise out there that like are D&D or tabletop games that revolve around Lord of the Rings lore. One of them is the One Ring. It's a fantastic game that doesn't really have a lot of combat. It's not very combat oriented, but more like these great quests that you go on. And then there's the Adventures in Middle Earth. And initially I was like, I'll make a game in one of these, but I found them limiting. I wanted to have a little more freedom and allow my players to have a little more freedom, but also still exist in the D&D 5e standard. And 5e is, 5th edition, because that's the version we're on right now. So I chose to do the first stage because the first stage had two things that made it kind of the best choice. One was it wasn't a long period of time, meaning that if I had characters who wanted to exist in different events, that I could possibly do that just by either having them exist in family lines, because Tolkien has, really organized the Edain or men in really nice houses where you could, call back to their heritage, and you can customize that in D&D. And the other aspect was that there's such great tales in the first stage. And as you can see behind me, I chose to do Beren and Luthien. So the quest or the campaign that I created is called Heroes of the First Stage. And it kind of has a lot more going on than just Beren and Luthien. But what I did is I had them go and run parallel with the Lay of Luthien story, where they initially meet Belig Strongbow, a very notable character in Doriath, which is a realm within the first stage of a continent known as Beleriand, where they are introduced based off the relationship of one of the players, or just from them passing through. Because the way I set it up too is that I didn't want to limit like the characters and classes that you could use, but I had to somewhat, because magic is not like a very prominent thing in Middle Earth, in the sense of like Dungeons and Dragons, where some dude's just like throwing fireballs at you and you're just like, whoa, dude, like take it easy. But so I chose to like take some out, but I also asked everyone to be a little diverse in their background. And to bring up someone like KnewBettaDoBetta, his character that he had initially created was actually a Noldor elf from Gondolin.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting background. He was of the House of Frog, something that's mentioned in the Fall of Gondolin, and I believe in not in the Silmarillion, but it's like a very notable character. It's a very cool character, a smithy fighter, wielded a hammer, badass. And I kind of like had everyone do their own character, where Jeff was a Beorning, and Kali was an elf of Nan Elmoth, which is really cool because she's associated with Eol, the dark elf. So there's a lot of like different backgrounds. We had a dwarf, but we specifically had a hobbit too. So interestingly enough, because it's stated that hobbits exist in the Elder Days. So the biggest challenge I faced with the game, though, was making it engaging and interesting, because I find that in some games you just have like engagement, like combat engagement after combat engagement, it becomes a little tedious. So what I did to create a more immersive experience was I actually built all the maps from scratch and created like dynamic lighting and different effects there, and added different icons and tokens, so it felt like you were being pulled into the book. And instead of having it be focused completely on like just following this Beren story where like you just show up there, I made it more coincidental, or it made partial relation with some of the characters. Like the Beorning comes from the House of Beor, and like these certain aspects. And so it was a very rigorous like character creation process that actually ended up driving the story the most. And there are times where like I'll hop into the game and I'll have something pretty much curated, but there will be times where we don't even focus in on that because there are other things to do. And there are times in a D&D game where I'll like push things along, I should say, and just to get them involved, because I know they're going to have a good time. Like, we've seen Tilvildo, we've seen Feanorian lamps, we've come across trolls that have come down from the mountains, we've entered Nargothrond, they've met Celegorm and Cutterfin, they met Juan. You know, there are maps built for Mount Dolmed, there's maps for Nevras, there's maps for all sorts of these areas, there's maps for Tol Sirion, because obviously we know which way this is all going, and so forth. And I think one of the first maps I showed everyone was the Menegroth map, which I had built from scratch. And, you know, here's what I'll do. I'll let Kali and Jeff kind of describe their experience in the game after giving everyone the gist of, you know, the effort that went into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a nerd.
Oh, jeez.
You got it.
One thing that Pete didn't mention, a character that we met that KnewBetta missed out on is Thorin Gwethel. So you didn't get to meet her when you could have if you were playing the game.
I
Didn't
regret
go well
that.
for her when she met us, but
They
I love-
tried
I love
hard to
Thorin
fight her
Gwethel.
too.
As a
tried
character,
hard.
I really think she's a cool character. I would love to actually see how he incorporated Thorin Gwethel into the story, and you guys must have decimated her. That's what it sounds like to me.
Did they?
it was the battle ended in a I don't think she was there to stay, but she came in kind of, we had a little encounter with her, and then she went on her way. But definitely it was I think that we see thing is like, and this is where people agree, is that with the DM they have to plan events out, but they can't plan for everything. And so when something happens to where your characters do something that you didn't expect, you have to improvise. And the improvisation in this case was Thorin Gwethel casting a spell on us, so we couldn't chase her anymore, and disengaging, so she had to go and do something else. Because I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think that one of our characters did something that Pete was not expecting, was able to get right to her without going through any of her lackeys. And
Part of Arda's
we,
character
yeah.
showed up as a dwarf, and he decimated their forces. Put it that way. Like, I did not expect, like, because part of Arda this is his first game as well, and he's never played D&D, and he just, like, but we started playing another campaign, and he's gotten a little more immersed in it, and surprisingly his character just ended up being really strong. Like, kind of like how yours is a rune knight. That's what your character is, a fighter rune knight. Is like, when you first did combat, you were like one-shotting enemies, and it was like, oh my gosh. And it's like, these things you can't always predict when you do character creation. So yeah, it's like Thorin Gwethel showed up, she transformed from bat to vampire form, this dwarf smacked her really hard, and then she ran away.
Shit got real, as they say. That's awesome. Hey, so Jeff, I want to ask you guys a question, and I would like you to answer it for me. Tell us about the roles, because I know when I started to play, I was really intimidated by the roles. I didn't really know what meant, and Be1mont did an excellent job of breaking it down and then explaining how it went. So can you explain to all the viewers who aren't familiar with rolling and why it's so important and what it does?
Yeah, so you mean like the dice rolls, right? Like, not like the rolls itself, but like the dice rolls. Yeah, so D&D uses a D20 system where you basically have bonuses. Like, so let's say you have a short sword or a long sword, and you want to attack with it. The enemy is wearing armor, and so they have what's called an armor class, and you have to roll your dice, and then you take your dice roll. Let's say you roll a 10, then you have your character bonuses based on your strength and your expertise. You get a +5, so you rolled a 15. The armor class is 16, you would miss. So your roll has to beat their armor class in order to succeed. The other way that rolls are incorporated into the game are you roll your stats that would determine what your character is made up of. Are they strong? Are they dexterous? Are they smart? Are they charismatic? Are they good talkers? Another thing that rolling does is not just combat wise, but let's say you want to go in, you want to climb a tree, you want to disarm a trap, you want to swim across the river, you want to jump over the gap. You have to roll an athletics check, or an acrobatics check. And sometimes the fun part of the game is when you try and do something and it doesn't go the way it's supposed to. You roll bad, and then the DM has to improvise, and you end up doing something different, and it ends up not being what you wanted to be, but the story evolves and you have to do something else. And kind of going back to showing how the game's evolved, there used to be this thing called THAC0, and you think the game is hard now. This is literally math. It stands for 2-hit armor class 0. And so back in the old days, back in my day, armor class used to be lower. So you had the lower your armor class, the better. And so in order to hit someone with a armor class of 0, you had to roll a 20. If your THAC0 was 20, you had to roll a 20 to hit them. But if their armor class was 5, you have to roll a 15. And so yeah, it's evolved, but it all makes sense in the game, and I think that 5th edition has done a good job of simplifying a little bit, so it's not as clunky, it's not as math driven, it's not as hard to kind of explain. Because I said THAC0, and I don't know if anybody else will know what that is, but I don't want to explain it. Yeah. It's very hard to explain.
It's really cool. And like nowadays with D&D, you know, you have like advantage and disadvantage, or like normal rolls, where like your position matters a lot more now. Where, for example, if I'm next to someone as a rogue and I'm stealth, you know, no one could really see me, but because I'm 5 feet next to, you know, an ally, I get something that's called advantage on whenever I take a shot at someone. And this allows me to take a higher roll, because you'll roll twice, lower roll being that one that's normal, or disadvantage, higher being the advantage roll. And it really like creates these dynamic situations. And I love that. That's one of my favorite parts about D&D, because like I said, I love playing rogue characters, especially with what they have, what's called a sneak attack. And, you know, I could go in like tunnels and hide behind doors and hide in like whatever and pop out and do like really heavy damage and then like slink right back into the shadows.
Ooh, man. Sounds cool. Sounds amazing.
Does it knew better? Does
But you know,
Totally
but like
serious.
you hear us talking about it, and like we're talking about these dice rolls and whatever, but at the same time we're talking about like a lot of situations that exist in the Tolkien books, and like just what he was talking about, like crossing a river. I mean, we know the chapter of Mirkwood and what happens to Bomber and everything like
Yeah.
that.
Roll
Those would
one.
all need rolls, you know, like with the rope throw going across, those would all be rolls to do that type of thing. Or for example, like when they're in Moria and they're going to do combat, and you know who's shooting first to the door, you have Boromir and Aragorn like in their roles. So if we were to say that's a D&D situation, they would have really high initiative rolls. That's why they're going first in the situation.
Yeah, like
And then if
Sirius
they're
rolled
obvi-
a 0 when he tried to cross the ravine.
exactly, Bombor critically failed, and that's why he fell in the water and lost his memory.
Yeah, I know
Or
what's
like,
going on, Cal. I'm being serious. I'm tuned in. I'm tuned in. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I'm totally tuned in. I was just thinking about my next question, which I think you guys are going to like. Are you guys excited for the new D&D movie that is coming out?
I am. I mean, I'll watch anything. Don't get me wrong. Like the original. I don't know if you remember the original.
doesn't sound like he's excited.
Let me explain. The original D&D movie. I don't know if anyone remembers the original D&D movie from like the early 2000s, late
Yeah.
1990s.
I remember it came out. I never watched it.
I never watched it, but I hear it was
Ooh,
bad.
man, with Jeremy Irons and everything, that
Jeremy
was a
Irons,
brutal
Justin
movie.
Whalen,
And
yeah.
I still watched it. I didn't even care. I'm gonna watch it because like I enjoy all the references. I actually really like Chris Pine as an actor too, and I'm excited to see like what they're gonna do, because they have a bard, they have a fighter, they have a druid who's turning into what's called an owlbear. I think that's what it is, and like you know they had like really cool deep references, like a gelatinous cube as an enemy in D&D that's very like it's very popular because everyone always like laughs at what it is, because it's literally like a blob square, and like if you get sucked in it'll like start devouring you fairly. But they had that. They had references to a acid dragon that spews acid out of its mouth and like burns the ground it hits. So it's
No,
like it's
like
a lot of deep cuts.
now one thing I do watch Critical Role Vox Machina. I watch that religiously. I love it. I think the show is
It's a
great.
great show.
That has an acid dragon in it, and I love it. And if you know what I'm saying, like if I, you know, I think it has the different classes and everything, and I love the characters. It's amazing. It's adult. It's wonderful. I watched the whole thing, both seasons. I'm really into that show, enamored with that show. So on that front, I'm totally on the front lines of it. I'm appreciative of it. So you know what I'm saying. I'm slowly but surely getting into it. You know what I'm saying. So maybe I'll watch this movie. I won't know what's going on, but I'm gonna watch the movie.
I will watch it definitely. I'm gonna watch it definitely.
Yeah, me and my family are gonna go see my little sister's want to go see it. So it's gonna be it'll be a good time. I think that if it's been delayed, so it's very typical of a D&D game, being delayed and not being able to meet its deadline. So that's good. But no, it looks like it's gonna be fun, and hopefully it's better than the last one.
Oh, yes.
It can't be
It
worse.
can't be worse.
It can't be worse.
Yeah, so like Jeff said, scheduling is kind of the big running joke with D&D games. Trying to get as few as 4 adults together at the same time for 4 hours, let alone the way we're doing it. We have everybody we're spanning like 5 or 6 time zones. We're going from the West Coast to England. So we're trying
yeah.
to like schedule between like an 8-hour time, like basically a work day's time difference. But somehow we managed to do it because we're just that dedicated. But that's the running joke. So that D&D games, you have trouble scheduling them, and they're usually deferred and delayed. So the movie itself has also followed that tradition of being deferred and delayed.
All right. Well, first of all, the logistics that it takes to do that, I have nothing but respect for you guys for doing that. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the attention span for that either. I'm like, oh, right, are we ready to go? Like, what? You know what I'm saying? So I commend you guys for that, man. And you guys sound like you have the most fun. I actually be jealous on the low, so I'm gonna get into it. One game. I'm not doing multiple games, but one game.
We've had people come and watch. We've had Andy come and watch Tolkien with Friends. We've had the Soul Hero Chris come watch us. If you just want to come and watch, I mean, obviously I don't know how exciting that would be. You don't have to stay the whole time, but you just want to drop in and watch. Most of the time, when Kelly talks about the schedule gymnastics, it involves me waking up before the sun comes up and getting ready to play. But like I said, it's about being there with your friends, and it's a good time. So,
well, as me and Be1mont know, you are a man that can do anything, because this gentleman, I just want to let everybody know, has almost completed Naruto in like with 2 weeks. Like
it's like 2 months. He's done like 2 months.
I don't know about months.
It's been 2 months.
Months?
It's been, but it's like 900 something. Like it's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, it's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, but he's moving though. Like, and we're busy. Like we be doing stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Whether he works every day, like
he works every day.
I do have a job. Yes,
he has a job.
If my boss
I know we're
watches, I do my job. Yes,
and stuff like that. And you guys are like, well, you guys are social media people. Like you're like, I have a whole full-time job. I work overnights. So when I get up in the morning, I'm like, me and Kali both be knocked out. Like we'd be like, we'll hit each other up and be like, what do you want? Like, why? What is happening? And
are we podcasting today?
Energy,
yes, okay.
Like, she'll remind me, like, I'm on live yesterday and I'm just having a grand old time. And then she's like, yeah, tomorrow with the podcast. And then I was like, what? You're lying. What are you talking about? It's like so embarrassing. Like, podcast tomorrow. She's like, yeah, we're doing it with this. And then I'm like, yeah, we're doing it with such and such. So she's like, no. They're like, what? We're podcasting? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's happening. I'm confusing people. Callie, just be a computer for me. You know what I'm saying?
Put me in front of the camera, Callie. I got this.
just let me just do my spiel. Just let me talk. I'm not with all the other stuff. So, but yeah, Jeff is awesome. He mowed through Naruto, which is something we really, me and Be1mont really, are into getting Callie into it. Callie doing great. You know what I'm saying? When she gets in the zone, we watch a massive amount of episodes. I'm really proud of her. And Jeff just took the initiative on his own to just mow through it, and it's so cool to have him come because we're really into certain characters. I have an anime channel as well where I discuss it. I haven't been on it forever, but I always have arguments and stuff like that, and it's so much fun. And now to have Jeff, somebody who when he knows about something, it's great to hear his feedback about it. You know what I'm saying? If somebody tries to challenge something or something, he'll have such a great or snarky remark, but it'll be based in knowledge. So it's really cool to see that. It's always fun. People trying to challenge him, and he's like, well, actually, you know what I mean? And it's funny. And we've been talking about characters, and they've had no clue about him, and now he's like, I know that now.
Yeah,
I know that reference.
And he'll ask. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go on,
if you talk to KnewBetta, he hates Sasuke, and and I know that Belmont's favorite character is Kakashi. And you got
Jeff. Stop
Orochimaru.
it! Stop
Um,
it!
you
This
got
is
these
hurting
great
me now.
characters.
People will
Here we
believe
go.
you.
I,
People will
I
be
will say
watching
this,
this like, what? Who? What?
Jeff
Like,
always comes
this
to
is
me though,
how
and
he
he
is.
asks questions, like questions
Yeah.
that I haven't thought about, or like that makes me be like I have to go back and look because he'll like find this one little attention to detail. I'm like, I didn't realize that. I've seen this show like 3-4 times at this point. I gotta like go back and watch the episode. So the insight that Jeff brings when watching these anime is awesome. But I think the bigger point of all this is like, we're all friends, and like, yeah, D&D is one thing, but we really do talk about like almost everything, and we really do share a lot. And like, having said that, I do want to say I appreciate you guys a lot, and especially with trying to do D&D with you, Knew Better, like at least trying to do it. That's a huge effort right there to just hop into something with like without any background. So
Thank
I
you, man.
appreciate
I'll be
that.
feeling terrible, and I'll be like, they probably like this guy.
No,
But
no, not at
I
all.
really did not grow up in that type of environment where D&D is played at all. And so,
No,
like,
neither was I.
please don't take it any kind of way. It's just, I mean, it's going to take
Not at
some
all.
getting used to. That's all.
I grew up fighting with my brother over Madden, like on like for an hourly basis. I mean, we'd come home, we'd fight over a video game, and we'd decide we're gonna play Madden together. It would go back and forth. The era of NFL Blitz was a nightmare in my household. It was a
Yeah,
nightmare.
Blitz, kid. NBA Jam, Blitz. They don't know,
No,
kid.
don't even get me started about that. We would play this game, Sega Genesis, called NBA Larry Bird versus Michael Jordan in a dunk contest. That game was hard,
Yeah.
man. That was a hard game to play.
Yo,
But
Tecmo Bowl,
I
bro. Back in
digress.
the day on Nintendo, son. They don't know about that. Super Tecmo Bowl.
Jeff knows about that. Jeff loved that. I know it.
So yeah, Tecmo Bowl 2 was the one that we played when I was growing up, but I think it was called Super Tecmo Bowl. But then there's also Tecmo
Yeah.
Bowl 3 where you could create your own character. Yeah, these games are awesome.
Bo Jackson was unbeatable in that game, bro.
Well, because he's the ultimate what would have happened if he hadn't gotten injured, right? So it's too bad.
Broken. Man was broken. But
So,
It was a cheat code, for sure.
one
So
thing
let
I did want to talk about, I thought it'd be cool to talk about is because we keep bringing it up. We bring up like how did you get in D&D? What's stopping you from getting into D&D and like this stuff. And I do want to add on to that a little, where it's just like, I have to say trying new things is always frightening for everyone. And D&D is definitely a social experiment. It's a social experiment where it's easier to take yourself out of your shoes and try to do something different, or put yourself right in your own shoes and see how that you would react in situations you would never find yourself. I do enjoy that, seeing like, for example, with the first stage game, seeing like people come in and out, and like you say you want to be a part of the game. I have the perfect person for you, apparently. And I also have 2 other guests who are going to be joining us too. Just a little surprise thing. We'll be taking on characters for one session as well. And the goal is to have the kind of the best ending to this campaign. So I'll definitely talk to you about that. Not going to spoil it here though.
all right. I'm in it, man. I'm in. I'm gonna try to dedicate myself and not back out this time. I'm gonna really buckle down. Get into this nerd shit.
Try
You
our
know what I'm
best.
saying?
This is being
We'll
recorded,
try
right?
our
So we can
best.
hold them to this.
All right.
Yeah.
Callie, delete the footage.
Clip it.
Delete the
Clip
footage. So
Oh,
what are
man.
you guys favorite example of D&D within a movie? Not the movie being about D&D, but D&D being represented in the movie. What's your favorite movie that has like a D&D-esque game in it where they're like really into it? Like Stranger Things, for example. I know they're playing like a D&D type campaign in that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Pete, do you have one?
I really like, when that wizard tried to like, take on the big bad of the campaign, and he almost won, but then he fell down this bottomless chasm, and it turns out he was just getting all the XP and the best weapons, and then showed up later with the group as, a completely different character with the same name. It was crazy. I think his name was Gandalf. It's definitely one of my favorite parts of D&D.
Yeah, and so it's funny. So my older brother has 4 kids, and one of the kids is Sammy, and so my brother's a huge D&D guy, and so his son, he plays D&D with his son sometimes, and my Sam is 13 now, but he was probably like 10 or 11 when this happened, where he was getting into D&D, and then Spencer was having him watch the Lord of the Rings movies, and there's a scene in the first in the Fellowship of the Ring where right after the long awaited party, where Gandalf is talking to Bilbo in his house, and he's trying to get him to give up the ring, and Bilbo kind of fights back and says, why should I give it up? You just want it for yourself. And Bilbo said, Gandalf, I can't do the voice, but somewhat, he says, Bilbo Baggins, right? And he seems to get bigger. That's like my nephew was like, Dad, he just performed thaumaturgy. Like, and so like just to like kind of incorporate that into D&D, like he was able to know, like it was able to help him relate to Gandalf better because he kind of had a background in spellcasting from D&D. And so it was kind of cool to see him be able to like make that connection. So that's a neat one. Buffy the Vampire Slayer used to have some interesting there was like one episode where they play a game of D&D. But yeah, Stranger Things is a huge one where they it kind of they liken everything to their D&D game, and it kind of started as a D&D group, and it's making everybody take more notice of D&D as a whole now, which is great. But yeah, I think that those are all good examples of D&D kind of working its way into pop culture itself.
Absolutely.
If I had to choose one thing that's a direct reference, though, is Futurama. And if you know what I'm talking about, I think it was a TV movie they came out with where they did their own like D&D-esque game involving this like infinite die that's a 20 die. It's very hilarious. I'm a big fan of Futurama. But yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces of media. So if you want to go check that out, I think it has something to do with Bender in the title. I forget. I can find it though.
This isn't a movie, but I feel like it was based on D&D a bit. You tell me if I'm wrong, but there was a game for Nintendo back in the day called Gauntlet, and I feel like it had like classes like that, and it was like cool like that. And I actually did play that, so I feel like that.
I love Gauntlet.
Yeah,
Gauntlet Legends, yeah, for N64, yeah, it was great.
Absolutely, I agree. That definitely. I could definitely see that. Like games like Ultima or Baldur's Gate are like directly based off D&D and such. And like a game like that definitely has influences from that. Like Heroes of Might and Magic is another game that was super popular. I played it as a kid. That definitely has a lot of like takes a lot from D&D games too. So I 100% agree about that.
All right. Callie, you're kind of quiet over there in the corner.
I was just thinking that I'm not well versed enough to have an answer to that question yet, but I have noticed myself when I watch things thinking in terms of D&D, like, oh, okay, that's like the healer of the group, and oh yeah, that's the tank of the group, and like, so
Yeah,
it all starts to like come together into a beautiful nerdy mix.
Like even Willow, look at how Willow's set up, where you have like this like cursed wizard who's trapped in a form, and then you have this halfling who's like kind of faking it, and then you have like Mad Mortigan, and he's like this great champion fighter and stuff. They really do take on like those same roles of like, where do you fit in here? Are you frontline? Well, are you a caster back here? Well, do you have charisma like Willow, like going around like trying to convince people to like, take this baby or help him out with things?
My man used to play World of Warcraft, yo, so that very much has similar things in it and stuff like that. So you know what I'm saying?
Very party dependent, yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that. So yeah, I think we're getting the gist of it. I think we're getting the gist of it. Relating it. We're seeing it's infiltrated more pop culture than we could even possibly fathom. And a lot of people are actually D&D lovers and don't even realize it.
That's right.
So I'm starting to see that.
You see, before video games, people had to fake it, with either reading books or doing role playing through D&D if they wanted to feel like, like they're in a fantasy.
Facts. Before it was at your fingertips. So I have a question for you guys. I don't care who goes first, but I want to ask you guys both the same questions. Set of 3 questions, actually. Okay. So if you guys you could pick anybody from any time period within Middle Earth, Arda, whatever. So I'm going to ask you, throughout the history of Arda, who would you marry? Who would you want to protect you? And who would you fight?
So it's marry, fight, protect.
Marry, protect you, and then fight.
We got them thinking. They got
I'm
their
marrying
thinking
Luthien.
faces on.
I'm
Yeah.
marrying
Now you
Luthien.
Luthien.
Such a basic.
Luthien.
The
No, it's not,
separate-
dude. No, it's not. I just want to feel like I'm being taken care of. Okay, who am I
She will
protecting?
definitely take care of you.
I'm protecting.
No, who's protecting you?
Well,
who's
if he's marrying
protecting me?
if he's marrying Luthien, Luthien is protecting him as well. Because let's
It
just be
sounds
honest,
like
no,
yeah, that's a
Luthien's
2-in-1
awesome.
answer there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was just one
we going to do
answer.
a sucker answer like that? We're going to be like, Luthien.
No, I'm just kidding. No, if anyone, I'd actually choose Haleth to protect me. Like Haleth held
Ooh.
out for 7 days against orcs. She is so badass. And if I had to choose someone to marry, like, yeah, I'd be between Luthien and Gladio just because of the sheer splendor of the both of them. But I'd also choose, like, you know, I would choose someone more like, you know, Éowyn. I like Éowyn a lot. She's one of my favorite characters in the Two Towers and Return of the King, obviously. And if I had to choose someone to fight, wow, that's a really tough choice. Does it matter if they're good or evil, or
It
can I
doesn't
just like
matter.
choose
It
anyone?
just depends
if I
on
wanna
you,
fight?
sir.
Man, I'm gonna have to fight what's his name? Ulfang. I hate him. I hate what he did.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to fight Ulfang. I want revenge, man,
Ulfang.
for Durloman.
All thing the black.
Yeah, I'm coming for Broda too. Like, I hate that guy.
Brother got his.
He got his. Not soon enough.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah. So as far as like marry, you know, just one of those things where like there's so many good answers. I don't know. I mean, Arwen is probably the most basic answer, but I'm gonna go with Arwen because you know
Okay.
she's the main heroine of the character of the trilogy. But as far as like protecting me, I mean, if I had to choose one character to protect me, it's gonna be Anwe, the Herald of Monway. But it depends on what you need. Like, there's something different. Like, you know, if you need someone's gonna get you from point A to point B to a treacherous place, you got Bar here, right there, right? You've got the father or Baron, even right there. If you need someone that's gonna you know, guard your back, you know, and make sure you get somewhere safely. There's also Gandalf, you know, for you know, you shall not pass. He's got the bag of tricks with the pine cones and the flaming pine cones. You know, he's got a lot going on. But I would choose Eowyn. He's one of my favorite characters that we don't learn enough about. And then as far as you want me to pick one of who I had to fight, I mean, because you got Ted Sandyman, you've got Eowyn, you've got Maeglin, you got these guys that you just want to like,
Right?
and not even like, you know, just yeah, so many hated characters throughout. But I mean, like even Wormtongue. But I think, you know, anybody that want to fight, that would be. I mean, got to take on the Cave Troll and Moria, right? Or the Balrog. That'd be cool. Epic.
Oh, it's big and bold. Most people, you know, choose punks and they try to beat up on the punks, but you
Mhm.
picking some
You
strong
went big.
characters right there. I
Nice.
respect
Well, if
it.
I got a
love it.
good protector, then it doesn't matter who I'm going against, right? So
He's got Gandalf,
All
you
right.
just said.
So we have some really cool, unique answers there, guys, and that's awesome. And we love how we talk about D&D, but we bring it back into the Lord of the Rings things because this is the voices of Arda, and those questions are astronomical. The answers, rather, to those questions are astronomical. They're wonderful. Gives me some insight on you guys. You know what I'm saying? You know, Jeff, I didn't know you wanted to fight Ted Sandyman. I like you. I like
who
that.
doesn't want to fight Ted Sandyman? Do you think I was a
Everyone.
bum?
Yeah, I know.
Or Bill
I'll
Fernie.
fight Bill
You always want
Fernie.
to fight Bill
Yeah,
Fernie.
Fernie, I
Yeah.
want to punch him. Yo, Sam was about to give Fernie the ones, man. Sam was about to give him the
He
ones.
said Gandalf, but like honestly, if I had to like I would actually redact who would protect me. I would between Haleth and I'd be between Beleg too. Beleg would
Yo,
be quite
that like
the companion.
Strongbow. That guy is not
Yeah, that would
no
be
game, yo. Yo,
that's-
even Gwendor
that's
before
not the best.
he went into the Nith, Gwendor was putting in pain, yo.
The Prince of Nargothrond.
Oh,
You
He
got
was
Herman, you know, doing his last stand on
Oh yeah.
the hilltop. I
Holy.
mean,
If
so
I had
many
to
good
pick a
ones.
man, I'm picking a Hurin. If I had to pick a man, yeah, absolutely. So
The
that's
Bellion
awesome.
of the fountain, you know.
So before we end up getting out of here, guys, we always like to thank you so much for coming and being a part of our podcast, being our guests, just being our friends. Because you guys are, if you guys don't know, these are our friends in real life. In the last year or so, we've really gotten close. I speak to these people every day. It's like my squad. So this is my untraditional squad. This is my squad from many different places. We got Canada, we got New York, we're from Utah,
I'm
Jeff?
in Utah.
Yeah.
Look at that. I got it right. Utah. We're from all over the place. You know what I'm saying? And I play games with Be1mont and Jeff every day. Talk to Kali every day. She yells at me every day about something. So it's really cool. I try to insult her at least once a week. You know what I'm saying? So I got her good this morning. I was like, yeah, I got you. So Callie is going to leave us with some self-care tips, as she always does, and this is going to make us better human beings, better people. So let's get into it.
All right, so these are self-care tips for D&D specifically. So, number 1, develop a preparation ritual. Repetition can be very cathartic. Before you sit down at the table, consider starting a preparation tradition. So each session, your prep ritual will make you feel ready to take on whatever challenges the game poses. There's a lot of comfort in clearing your mind and being prepared. And the second tip kind of goes along with that, and that's for the DM specifically, which is to get organized behind the DM screen. Take some time to organize your materials as part of your preparation ritual. Tip number 3, don't be hesitant to indulge. The game table isn't always relaxing, so you can make it as relaxing as you like. Light some candles, indulge in your favorite junk foods and sweets, play some music, really do what you like to get into the mood. Tip number 4, don't forget your human needs. So it's very easy to forget that you're an actual human being when you're playing a cast of NPCs, when you're narrating a story, when you're playing a character. So as cliche as this sounds, remember to stay hydrated, remember to eat if you're hungry, and remember to put the game on pause for bathroom breaks. Tip number 5, don't dwell on or focus on or get stuck on in-game mistakes. They happen. And that's part of the fun. Just keep rolling. Tip number 6, post-session decompression. So I think this is something that we do really well because we are genuinely friends. But after the game, we always take like a half hour or something just to decompress, to unwind, to go over what went well in the game, what didn't, all that kind of stuff. And tip number 7, consider a D&D talks. So if you find that you're not motivated by the games, that you're not bringing the same energy, don't worry, just take a little break from the game. Tell your friends that you need to reschedule because that's likely already happened. Just don't burn yourself out. It is just a game, even though it's a lot of fun.
Right.
Point, always have fun. That is always the goal.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
gotta have fun. Follow Callie's tips.
All right, guys. It has been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. And we will see you literally probably like in 5 minutes because I'm going to go live and we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings. So
I'll probably be there.
see you soon, guys.
Thank
We
you.
are out, guys. Take it easy. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everybody.